So what's up people, and welcome to the chapter 62 discussion of Kaiju number 8 or Kaiju 8号. So chapter 62 came out about a week ago, and as always I will leave a link to this chapter that's currently being shown on the publisher's official website, Manga Plus, for free to the North American audience. So if you're interested, go take a look at it before they pull this chapter back. Okay, so chapter 62. I do have to say that, it's going as we kind of all expected. And this is very signature shonen manga type. And the entire chapter can be summarized by the very first scene, where Leno is demanding more and more power from his battlesuit. And this, of course, ties into chapter 61, where we saw that Leno has been able to successfully control the battlesuit and was performing very well in the field. However, they started finding that Leno kept on demanding more and more from his battlesuit. He would not settle down to a level of power that he can control. He was almost forcing his body beyond its capabilities to draw more power out from the battlesuit. And of course, 62 continues from that, and we start seeing the consequences of such an act. And so this is a relatively straightforward chapter. It's a very shonen trope, and you've seen it in various other mangas where the focus character starts losing control and demanding more power for whatever reason. A good example is, of course, Rock Lee when he opened his chakra gates during the Chunin exam. And just like Rock Lee, the consequences that Leno is experiencing is, of course, the destruction of his own body. And yet he continues to move forward. And what we find out from this chapter is that it's not because of monster number 6's powers overwhelming Leno. Instead, this is a decision that comes straight from Leno himself. Commander Ogata mentions that once the power from the battlesuit is drawn, it doesn't just increase the physical strength of the wearer, but it also increases the synaptic responses from their brain. And because they get a heightened brain function, their desires, their persona, everything becomes heightened. And if within that desire is the desire to continue to increase power, then despite the damage that the body may get, this heightened realization continues to draw the host towards self-destruction. Now, with regards to Leno, we find out why he is demanding more power, and it turns out not to be ego, it doesn't turn out to be greed, it turns out to be guilt. The fact that he wasn't able to support people like Kafka or Iharu made him desire for greater power, and this, of course, is the result of that. If you want to think about it, it can be an addiction. You have seen people who know that what they're going to do is detrimental to their health, and they continue to do it anyway because of whatever reason they desire. And so Leno, despite the fact that his body is deteriorating, is demanding more power. And it becomes the point where even if he's consciously understanding that he's destroying himself, he cannot stop anymore. And the remaining part of this chapter is basically Leno destroying the enemy monsters, but at the same time, slowly destroying his own body. We see his body smash itself with severe injuries as he continues to go on. And of course, if you recall in the previous chapters, we were seeing it through Iharu's eyes, and we understand now why this continues to go on in that direction, because of course, at the end of the chapter, the one person who can come in clutch to save Leno is Iharu. And Iharu understands now that it's not about trying to better oneself so that they could be the best in the class. It's not about beating your fellow students. It's about being able to do something important when the time arises. And he understands that at this point, Leno needs support. And so despite his limited capability, Iharu goes in and through his actions somehow gets through to Leno. And so, yeah, it's a very nice chapter. If you are into very signature shonen nakama stories, this is a pretty good one. I don't know if it's as good as some of the masters out there in this sort of category, such as Black Clover or Naruto, of course. But it is pretty well written. And it does show the growth not only from Leno's perspective, but also from Iharu's. And it'll be interesting to see how this chapter moves these two characters further. But I feel that this is coming to some closure, and we will be getting some sort of interim success for Leno, and this may give the story the opportunity to focus on the other characters that are trying to develop themselves. Now, one thing I do have to mention is that, yes, Leno is a very self-conscious character. He's a very good-willed character, and his desires to excel pushes him further ahead. And it is a very charismatic character, but what is interesting is if you look at his persona, it becomes very similar to Kafka, who also is trying to push ahead and who also feels guilty for not having been able to stay up with somebody like Commander Mina, which he promised to do. And it's also very similar to Shinomiya in her guilt for not being able to save either of her parents when the situation became tense. And all three are trying to move forward by going above and beyond their natural capabilities to be able to push forward. And thank God there is Vice Commander Hoshina, who has a completely different persona, or else we would have a comic full of very similar characters. And that is the one criticism I might put for this story, is that many of the characters are very similar. It doesn't mean that they're flat, but they are very similar to each other. And if you put Iharu into the picture, that might make it 4. So it will be interesting to see how Matsumoto Naoya will take these characters further. And I hope that eventually there will be a little bit more distinction between the characteristics of these 4 characters. But in any case, yeah, we're starting to see the closure in Leno's growth. And this will probably give the comic the opportunity to go to the other characters eventually. And once chapter 63 comes out, I'll bring out another video. I hope you join me at that time. But this is the chapter 62 video for Kaiju Hachiko, Kaiju number 8. Thank you very much for listening. And until the next episode, happy manga reading. And as always, Jaya, nice day, everyone.